So 3 years ago, we went out and we asked, who's interested in social media? And the answer was not many. It was about 17%. And that was who was looking at social media. The percent of contact centers in the industry were looking at social media as a customer communications channel, about 17%. And then we asked again in 2011, and it was still about 17%. And I wrote, I started writing, social media stall. But I also write, not to add to the confusion, I also write a column in a magazine called Contact Center Pipeline. Does anybody read that? I hope. I have a column called The View from the Saddle every month. And I write about things that sort of catch my attention in the industry. One of these things I thought was interesting was social media stalled for a couple of years. And then we looked at it again, we asked again in 2012, and we found about 38%, double the number of contact centers over 2011. We're looking at social media as a communications channel, which was kind of interesting, a double of numbers in 1 year. And then we asked again last year at the end of 2013, and we came up with almost half the market is now actively supporting social media. If they're not actively supporting it, another about 30% intend to by the end of next year. So we're expecting by the end of next year to be somewhere in the neighborhood of 83 to 85% of the market actively supporting social media in the contact center. Those with no plans, honestly, I expect that to go down to zero at some point because social media is unavoidable. Standard performance metrics for social media monitoring are going to require some modifications. Customer expectations are consistent. The customer still expects an excellent customer experience. They expect a high level of service. The problem is, how do we define a high level of service in this new communications channel? They expect a timely response, but how do we define timely in a social media situation? We can't. It's very difficult to, for example, come up with an average speed of answer, because where it may be in minutes in the voice communications area, we may be talking about hours or even days in social media. So the definition of immediacy changes radically. The final goal is still the same, and that is problem resolution. That's you'll see that sort of as a theme throughout this presentation. The goal of problem resolution is remains, but the rules of engagement are being established on the fly. And I thought it'd be interesting to talk a little bit about one case study that I'm very familiar with. And you may recognize that name, Joe Staples. He's up on the stages a lot. Joe is the chief marketing officer at Interactive Intelligence. And back in, I guess February and March, he decided to write a blog based on a travel experience that he had in January. Now, you all recall in January what it was like trying to travel with the weather the way it was, and airports were closed, flights delayed, and luggage was lost and rerouted, and flights canceled, I mean, you name it. And he experienced it in this one trip that he took in January. So what he decided to do, and he blogged about this, was a customer service experiment with Delta Airlines, which is his preferred airline. He was going to contact them first with a compliment. He had during this ordeal, there was one particular gate agent who was very helpful. He got all the details. He was going to contact Delta first of all and compliment them on his gate agent. So he went to the website to register this compliment and found that there was no way to do it. There was no email option. There was no web chat option. The only options he had were a phone call and Twitter. So he took the first option and got on the phone. We'll get to the social media part of this in a minute. And when he finally got to an agent, the agent said, well, you have to go online and fill out a form. So that's what happened with the compliment part. Next, he was going to register a complaint on this this same trip about a less than helpful gate agent. So, excuse me, boy. So went to the IVR. He got he went to the phone was answered by the IVR. The IVR said, "Why are you calling? What's your, is it a compliment, complaint, what?" He said, "Complaint." So he was on hold for 6, and by the way, I should mention that he's like one of these diamond flyers, and he said in his own words, he flies enough miles every year to go around the world 7 times. So he's like the highest rank, frequent flyer status that Delta has. But he didn't use that. He did this experiment as we mere mortals would, just going through the processes on the website. So he said, "Complaint." He was on the call, on hold 16 minutes. When the agent finally answered, he said, "I want to file a complaint." And the agent said, "Oh, well, then you need to call our customer care line." So he was told to call another line, which doesn't make sense, because if he called and said complaint, why didn't IVR direct him to the customer care line? That's a different story. So he decided instead to tweet his complaint, which he did. By this time, I'm following the blog. I started to get interested in this, so I started to modify his tweets and send some out myself. Check out Joe's travel adventures. Our Delta, are you paying attention, and so on. Interestingly enough, within 12 hours of my tweets, I got a response from Delta that says, "Thanks for the heads up, we'll look into this." 24 hours later, Joe still hadn't gotten a response from Delta. So there's obviously a bit of a problem there anyway.